Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the one and only Dan Z. We're recording this on Wednesday, July 8th. It's roughly the temperature you bake cookies at here in New Hampshire. What's going on there weather-wise, Dan?
It's warm, it's humid, it's the times I don't love living in Illinois because the humidity here is, you wouldn't think it's bad, but it's pretty bad. Although today we had a cool spell of about 93 degrees.
Okay, all right, you win. I don't think I think we're making it to 93 tomorrow. I think we're getting your weather tomorrow. So
oh, good, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, okay. All right. So it is now 6 months and 19 days, but who's counting? Since Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, opened in theaters. And Dan, does it surprise you that, here we are, in a time traditionally, after a Star Wars film comes out, where, people are watching a Blu-ray, DVD, that sort of thing, talking it up. And there just seems to be so little chatter now about this J.J. Abrams movie, except, of course, that ridiculous rumor that broke, last week about how Disney is now going to erase and reboot the most recent trilogy. That's not going to happen.
No, why would anyone think that would actually happen? It's not the billions and billions of dollars spent and made over these movies, and whether you like them or not, they're made. I mean, there are plenty of things that I don't like that have been made, but you can't unmake them. So yeah, these movies are here to stay, buddy. And I think for the most part, people are okay with it. But you know what it reminds me of, Jim? It reminds me of when The Last Jedi came out. I mean, now that was followed, shortly after by Solo 6 months later. But even before that, even before the press engine for Solo started to go downhill, The Last Jedi kind of faded away. Do you feel like this is kind of a sign of the times we're in? Just like how things fall out of, I mean, even Hamilton's still, very popular, but even that is starting to die down a little bit after a couple of days.
Well, but I think you bring up an interesting point. We live, face it, when Star Wars, the initial, A New Hope came out in 1977, there was literally only one way to watch this. You could go to the movies. And, and in fact, 6 months in, Star Wars was still out in theaters. I mean, not doing the business that it did, the start of the summer of 1977, and certainly wasn't in as many theaters, but it was continuing to play. Whereas now, I mean, well, especially in our COVID-19 world where no movie theaters are open. So where are we watching these things? We're watching them on our laptops or our flat screens at home or on our phones. And, for me, I feel bad for the guys who labored, like crazy to finish the effects in time for the Rise of Skywalker, only to that somebody sitting at home watching these the battle with the 1,000 Star Destroyers on their phone, so it's like, oh yeah, I can see every detail you crammed into this scene. But for me, I guess what I find fascinating is that no one seems to be talking about Rise of Skywalker right now, but everybody is talking about The Mandalorian.
Yep.
I mean,
it's always the next thing, but this one's got a lot of buzz because of some exciting news.
Well, yeah. Now, can you talk about the publishing effort? Because that, to me, suggests that, face it, the folks at Lucasfilm, the folks at Star Wars, this is not a one-shot deal. That there is, they have decided, we're getting behind this, Star Wars television series in a big way.
Yes, and since there are no movies, that we know of officially, titles, directors, anything, this is their next big push, and it's definitely going to get us by until we get to the movies. And it is kind of weird not having a movie to get excited or hype for, because we haven't had that since 2014 or so, or 13, whenever when was the acquisition? Was it 2012?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to say September that year.
Was it
Uh,
September or October?
yeah.
And we've had from 2012 till now to be excited for movies, but now we don't. But we know for sure we've got The Mandalorian coming, and they announced this huge thing on StarWars.com about the different publishing stuff. We've got novels, we've got junior novelization, we've got a lot of fun things coming.
And I have to tell you, I hear more often from Amazon in regard to the art of The Mandalorian. It's like, it'll be in September, I promise. It's okay, all right. I'm patient. I can wait.
Ironically, we just talked about art of books and how they always seem to take so long.
Yeah,
Now we've got another one.
Yeah, genuinely looking forward to this, especially on the heels of Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. But yes. I guess in a weird sort of way, if you think about it, yes, the Rise of Skywalker is in the rearview mirror, but we've already had a pretty stunning year, so far when it comes to Star Wars. I mean, we finished out the Clone Wars with, the final season with some epically strong stories there, incredibly well told. Likewise, the weird, in fact, you and I talked about this, that I as much as I enjoyed the actual first season of The Mandalorian, I think I actually like the Disney Gallery Mandalorian more because of the way it popped the hood and how we got to meet the personalities of these folks who were making it. And, their, the wonderful cutting edge tech, coupled with the interesting storytelling choices but the kicker was just this week. Did you get the press release for the Mandalorian serial?
No, I did not. I'm just
okay. Well, here's the thing. The Mandalorian child serial, and in fact, it I guess realistically, if they were being truthful here, they would have had a picture in the box of the child with a little bowl of bone broth, but no, he's there with a bowl full of fruity flavored cereal with Baby Yoda shaped marshmallows.
And this, of course, is canon.
Yeah, well, evidently, but here's the thing: it's due to arrive in stores in August. However, if you cannot wait, Sam's Club will have the bulk size double box, which will be arriving in the middle of this month. So, I mean, if you just cannot wait to get that, that morning surge of diabetes,
That's right.
this, till August, head to Sam's Club. Middle of this month, you can pick up on this. But
just like that, Sam's comes in and whisks away all our worries. Isn't that nice? Let's go back real quick to the publishing thing. One thing we know for sure is we've got an original novel by Adam Christopher. We don't know anything about it. We don't know the title. We don't even have a cover. We just know that it says that's coming out in December. Right? We've got a junior novelization. We've got some younger reader books. And then we've got some news of things from Marvel and IDW, which we don't have any details on. Hopefully, maybe we'll see something about this for the virtual San Diego Comic-Con, which they asked me to register as a member of the press virtually, so I did, but I'm not really sure what that entails or what that's going to look like, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, it's nice to hear I'll have somebody to hang out with virtually in the press room. That's right. I did the exact same thing, but it just, I think that's the thing that, in the fine San Diego Comic-Con tradition. Remember how you'd be only 10 days out and they'd finally reveal the programming?
Oh yeah.
You could only 10 days out start to make a plan for the event. And again, that's the old cliche that if you want to make God laugh, make a plan. That was the thing with San Diego Comic-Con is literally, okay, so when I can't get into that panel, the panel I'll try to get into is this panel, but I won't be able to get into that panel. So, I always had to stack them 5 deep, with the notion of, if I can persuade somebody to get me a press pass so I can get in the back door.
And
I know I can.
Comic-Con's the worst for that because they don't kick anybody out, so you can literally park
Oh
at the
yeah, the
beginning for the
campers.
Hello Kitty, Pez
Yeah.
dispenser panel, and then you have to wait 6 hours for the Dave Filoni panel.
Yeah, but that again, that's what it's the old joke about the black hole of Calcutta. Why do you go there? Well, that's where the diamonds are, and
Yeah.
I mean, and the very thing you talk about, there were some times when it's like, this is a panel I absolutely have to attend, and it's at 3:00 in the afternoon, and that's why I'm in line to get into this room at 10:00.
And I meant no offense to Drew Taylor, who I know is a big Hello Kitty fan.
Oh, do not poke the bear. All right. Anyway, now we were just talking about Comic-Con, which makes me think of Star Wars Celebration back in April of last year at McCormick Place, and of course you were all over that. And I have to ask, what you were there at that event, okay? And face it, the big things that people were talking about were obviously Rise of Skywalker. In fact, I remember you talking about that panel and the laugh that came at the end and the reaction that the crowd had, and then of course when Ian actually comes out on stage, everybody loses their mind.
Oh yes.
But I think about it, going into that event, obviously in the primary news position was, episode 9. I'd argue behind that was Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, because we're a few months out from that opening, and Mandalorian was kind of a distant third, don't you think?
It was for me because although they showed about 7-8 minutes of footage of basically the Mandalorian meeting the client and encountering the stormtroopers and arranging sort of the transaction. So there was really no context for it. You got a definite feel for the tone, but you weren't allowed to do anything with video or anything of that nature. So yeah, I think so. Although a lot of people were really buzzing for it. I was super happy about the Galaxy's Edge panel because it had about a 10-minute original video just for the event that featured Josh Gad trying to sneak into Galaxy's Edge.
Okay.
And of course, your buddy, who you guys were just brilliant with him on recent fine tuning, which was such kudos to you, by the way. That was just a wonderful show.
No, that was totally Drew. Drew, it again, when you listen to, I'm as gobsmacked as I am for the first minute or two, because again, I'm sitting there, working with Drew, and then suddenly here's Josh Gad, and it's like, okay, and
I would love to hear the audio of that. I'll have to talk to Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now I want to put something out there now. I just because in fact it speaks volumes about how important the Mandalorian is right now for the Walt Disney Company. So we've for months now we've been watching movies getting their release dates pushed back, and the question is, what's going to get people back into theaters? As of right now, it looks like the first Disney movie that will be released in theaters, it'll be on August 21st, and finally the live action reboot of Mulan will come out in theaters at that point. But Disney's concerned it's going to take something extra special to get people back into theaters. And just today I heard something genuinely wild, but it gives you some idea how important the Mandalorian is right now to the Walt Disney Company. Supposedly, the plan is that for the first week to 10 days that Mulan is in theaters, in front of it will be I don't think they've decided whether or not it's a trailer or it's a scene from season 2 of The Mandalorian. But the idea is the only way you get to see this, Dan, is you have to go to a theater to see Mulan. And then only after 10 days will this piece of material then pop up online.
That would be kind of awesome if that happened. Although it's tricky because then you run into is it safe to go into theaters yet? Maybe they're just gambling that it will be.
Well, just for me, this just seems like, in a weird kind of way. Remember, was it November of '98? Where what was it? Meet Joe Black.
That
The
one
film.
and The Water Boy, both before both of
There
them.
you go. But
Yep.
I mean, that was the thing. The only way you got to see the trailer for episode 1, Phantom Menace, was you had to go to the theater to see this. So,
And I did that, by the way.
did you really?
Of course.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I had to see it. Yeah.
Well, okay. But yeah, that I guess, and for me, it's just fascinating that we will have Star Wars back in theaters, mind you. It's this Star Wars television series. But beyond that, we then have to wait all the way till December 16th, 2022, which is when this yet to be named Star Wars movie comes out. And what's kind of interesting is what precedes that in July of that same year, 2022, is Captain Marvel 2 with Brie Larson. And did you see the interview earlier this week where she was talking about all of the franchises she had tried out for before getting Captain Marvel?
You're talking about YouTube star Brie Larson, right?
Yeah. Why, yes.
She's starting her
because
YouTube
that's
channel.
the happening place right now.
That's
YouTube.
Right. That's right. No, it's fascinating. Please share, because I think it's pretty awesome, pretty wild.
Well, she said, "Look, I auditioned for Star Wars. I auditioned for the Hunger Games. I auditioned for the Terminator reboot. Said I was actually thinking about the Terminator reboot today because I got a flat tire, and it was like, oh, the last time I got a flat tire was when I was driving to my audition for the Terminator. Got a flat tire at the audition, and then didn't get the job. So, again, for me, I know we've talked on earlier shows where it's like Jodie Foster versus Carrie Fisher for Princess Leia, but it's like, so what do you think? Were they considering Brie for Rey, or are we talking? I would almost think maybe the titled character in Rogue One, wouldn't you?
That would pop into my brain as well. Yeah.
So
because she's obviously an Oscar winner and a big talent, and you'd want to feature her in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just think but for me, again, it's just the notion of we've got these performers that are associated with Marvel that are now talking about getting into the Star Wars world. In fact, there was that wonderful interview that the Russo brothers just did with comicbook.com about face it, they're off doing their own thing now. They've wrapped up Endgame and Infinity War, but they were talking about, well, what will get you back to Disney? And it's like, and it's Star Wars, and so Joe talked about how I love the sandbox that Favreau is playing in right now. So again, once we're back to Mandalorian and the time frame that he's exploring the Star Wars universe in. It's like, I mean, obviously it was hugely important to us as kids and hugely important to our desire to become filmmakers. But then he said, I don't think, I don't know if there's a particular character that we want to work with. I think there's a lot of stories that have been told that started in the original universe. I'd be interested in seeing completely different directions of the story, maybe new characters in a different time period. That could be really interesting. And so you hear that, Dan, and you have to be thinking the same thing I'm thinking. That's High Republic, isn't it?
It certainly seems like one possibility, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But my goodness, I mean, there are so many people that are, supposedly working on these things. I just am looking forward to getting some actual, something locked in so that we can actually do that. Because remember, before the news of Ewan McGregor being on Disney Plus for Obi-Wan, which I wonder how things are going with that. It was rumored they had a director lined up for a movie for that too.
They did. I want to say Stephen Daltrey.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And let's not forget that supposedly, Mr. Marvel himself, Kevin Feige, is supposedly working on a Star Wars project. So exactly. I guess in a weird sort of way, again, in fact, that's the other thing that just amuses me about this. They're going to redo the most recent trilogy thing. It's like you have all these people, lined up. Why would you have them then and redo the movie we just did because we didn't get it right?
And that makes no sense.
I mean, it's just laughable.
And they all made over $1 billion.
Yeah. So
A beast.
because those are the movies you want to remake. It's just like Well, anyway, tell you what, folks. Give Dan and here guy a second here, and we're going to come back and talk. Oddly enough, about how Splash Mountain is potentially going to impact Galaxy's Edge.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
This episode is brought to you by Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 is the ultimate all-out warfare experience. Rip through the skies in aerial dogfights. Demolish your surroundings for a strategic advantage. Harness complete control over every action and movement using the kinesthetic combat system. Drop into multiplayer with your squad, or fight furiously as a member of the Dagger 1-3 squad in a gritty, adrenaline-fueled single-player campaign where you'll defend a world on the edge of collapse.
And we're back. Okay, so Dan, you saw the story in the past week about the Splash Mountain Princess of the Frog redo, right?
I did, and I love it. I think it's really, really cool. It's definitely time to turn the page and give this thing a different look.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I've been working the phones this week, and
I can't even imagine the conversations you've had.
Well, let's start with the guys who have literally just finished, getting Star Wars Galaxy's Edge open, especially the folks for Disneyland. And, they're, I'm not going to say not necessarily enthusiastic about this idea. They're just concerned, they have this brand new land that they have literally just completed. I mean, think about it, all of the issues they had with, Rise of the Resistance, getting that, to operate the way it was supposed to. And now, here's this project. And I want to stress here that in Florida, they're just talking about redoing Splash Mountain with this Princess of the Frog theme. You might see the train station, which, cozies up on Splash Mountain, get a New Orleans themed overlay. But that's pretty much it. It's, going to be a standalone. Whereas in Anaheim, they are giving some very serious thought to Critter Country becoming basically an entire Princess and the Frog land.
Wow.
With the ride and a Tiana meet and greet and a restaurant component, and a fairly big retail presence. I mean, they're really talking about leaning into this.
So really kind of taking like not even redoing Splash Mountain, but like that whole section of the park. That would be huge. My goodness.
Well, it would be, but here's the thing. Right in front, that there's a good portion of humanity when they're in Disneyland that is walking through Critter Country on their way to the ruins section of Black Spire Outpost.
Oh, sure.
So they can then experience Rise of the Resistance. And a couple of things. First and foremost, there's a number of Imagineers who are already talking about visual intrusion. Because Splash Mountain itself is already, I want to say, 89 feet tall. And if you've seen the concept art at all for the Princess and the Frog ride, they're extending the top of Chickapin Hill. They're going to build a copy of Mama Odie's boat. They're going to build a larger tree for, to properly seat the boat. And here's the thing: the tallest spire in Black Spire Outpost, Dan, is 130 feet tall. That's it. And the forest that they planted around the ruins with the A-wing and the X-wing there, in sort of the extended queue. I mean, face it, the trees there will grow. Over time, this isn't necessarily going to be an issue. But the concern is that, if the current timetable holds, that, they're looking to shut down the attraction, I guess, in 2022, and then have this redo of Princess the Frog open for 2024, more likely 2025. That's the 70th anniversary of Disneyland's opening. Just the whole notion is that if you're standing in Star Wars land and you could see a tree with a boat sticking out of it, that might take you out of your highly immersive Star Wars experience.
I will say that when I was at Disneyland in Galaxy's Edge, the first time I was there for the media preview, I stood over by Critter Country and that area, and I stood there and I listened and I looked and I marveled at how I knew how close I was to everything else, but I couldn't see or hear or sense anything. And that does create kind of a unique mystique to Galaxy's Edge that I don't want them to lose, but I don't want them to, do anything to not give this new Princess in the Frogland everything it deserves, but hopefully just make it not as tall. I don't know.
Well, we are very, very much still in the blue sky concept phase of this. In a weird sort of way, they did catch a break because, face it, if we're talking about the Disney's Hollywood studio version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, there's only one way in and, one way in, one way out. There's,
pretty much.
You have the Grand Avenue entrance over by the Muppets, or you could come in from the side by Toy Story Land. And, the interesting thing for Disneyland, they actually built it with the three entrances. There's the entrance up by where Big Thunder Ranch used to be. There's the sort of the midpoint entrance that's halfway down Big Thunder Trail, and then, of course, the side by Critter Country. So if the Critter Country side has to close while they're doing all this work to change it over, splash over to Princess and the Frog ride, they at least have those two other entrances. So, that in theory it won't have that big an impact. But yeah, it's long story short, folks, there's some interesting moving parts here, and the Star Wars guys really just wanted Galaxy's Edge to have its time in the spotlight, and it looks like that time may have already passed with, now, folks are shifting, from the top down. I mean, it's Bob Weiss himself who's talking about this Princess and the Frog ride.
Now, will that impact the conversations that we've had over the past year about them opening up a restaurant in Galaxy's Edge? Seems like it probably would, but I don't know.
It's so interesting you bring that up because, we are, as we are recording this on the 8th, a week from today, will be the first day of operation of Disney's Hollywood Studios. And this will be the first time that theme park's Galaxy's Edge will be open to the public since mid-March. Only this is the new version of Black Spire Outpost that has to figure out somehow to accommodate social distancing. And I genuinely feel for the Imagineers. I mean, you and I talked about this, about how they went to the marketplaces of Morocco and the port cities to get those nice tight little alleys that curved, that you went down and discovered things, and that's just not conducive to social distancing. And in fact, we were just pre-gaming the show tonight talking about how we're getting so many mixed messages in regard to to Galaxy's Edge. Like, do you want to talk about Olga's Cantina?
Yeah. So when Governor DeSantis said that all bars were closed down, Oga's was shut down. But also, Oga's is not exactly huge. I mean, it's spacious enough for what it is, but it's a very intimate place. So it's really hard to social distance in there. And the majority of what they have is pretty much alcohol based. So then on July 4th, there was a story on Jedi News that it was open again. But then we heard that it was actually not because of what the governor had said. So prior to recording tonight, I hopped on to My Disney Experience, and I put in July 18th, which is, of course, just a week and a half away. I put lunch for 2 for Jim and I just to see what happened, and I was able to book a time for 2:05 p.m. And that's today as we're recording this. So who knows what's going on? Maybe Oga's having some fun with us.
Well, the one thing I have heard, and I just want to put this out there because the other thing, frankly, I want to get across here is Len was in the Magic Kingdom yesterday for the cast member preview and talked about how Disney was being very this is they had all these plans in place, but this is the first time they were putting these plans in motion with large groups of people, and they were learning on the fly what worked and what didn't. And to Disney's credit, they were constantly adjusting these plans as they went along. And I want to caution folks that this is maybe the exact same situation we'll be dealing with Oga's Cantina. In fact, the notion being that, okay, the bars are closed in Florida, but does that mean that we can't serve non-alcoholic drinks? And and would people be willing to go into Oga's Cantina and drink a non-alcoholic drink just to enjoy the atmosphere? In turn, think about the blue and green milk that they now sell in the marketplace, where you have the option of you could have it plain, or they can throw a shot of rum into it. And is this going to be the same situation that because the bars are closed in Florida that you can serve beverages as long as they're not they're not alcoholic beverages? So I guess long story short here, if you're going down to Disney during this period, you should anticipate that things will be changing on a pretty regular basis, and you're going to have to roll with the punches. And on the other hand, Dan and I would love to hear, especially from you Black Spire Outpost veterans, how the social distance version of this part of that theme park works.
It's going to be interesting. And I will say that based on the preview stuff and what I've seen and read and heard from you guys and Len and everything, it seems like they're doing a pretty spectacular job under really, really difficult circumstances so far to just kind of make things happen.
But at the same time, I'm a pragmatist, and face it, theme parks are built designed from day one to accommodate tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And the whole notion of, how does this business now work when you can only have 10, 20, 30% of your normal crowd inside of, a place like this? It's like the lightsaber experience, the Savi's Salvage.
Savi's Workshop,
Savi's Workshop, excuse me. How does that now work? Because face it, anybody who's participated in, building their own lightsaber or seen videos of it, there is that wonderful moment where how many people at a time get to do this? 12, 15, something like that?
Let me think about this. Probably 12 to 15. Yeah, that one, that's not even open just because they just can't.
Well, again, you just between the tightness of the space, but at the same time, there's that lovely moment when everybody has their lightsaber and they raise them up in the room, and that just the sheer theatrics of that aren't going to work
No,
if
it
you
won't.
cut the capacity of the room down to half or a third, or for that matter, think about the droid depot, where when you're in there, everybody's scrambling for parts as they move along, and you want to talk about a high touch experience. People are grabbing parts, they off of the conveyor belt, looking at them, going, no, I don't want that one for my droid. That goes away too. Again, I'm going to be fascinated to hear from folks about, how they feel about this going forward, and um, if they feel it's successful, they still feel that it's worth their time. And oh, by the way, I guess as long as we're talking Disney and Star Wars, one of the other projects I was poking at and calling friends and trying to get an update on was the Star Wars Intergalactic Star Cruiser Boutique Hotel.
Oh yeah, I'd love to know what's going on with that.
They are continuing to work on it. They are, pressing forward with, completion of construction. The question now is, when does it open? Do they open it in the middle of this whole COVID-19 thing? Which is now anticipated to go into 2021, or would it make sense to effectively complete construction and then hold the hotel back to open it in, say, 2022? This is one of the many decisions that's being discussed right now within the company. It's just the whole notion of, it's the old cliche that you only get one chance to make a first impression.
And they're probably worried about, the financial, where people are at financially, and will people be as willing to take that? I mean, heck, I still want to do it, of course, but I don't know. It's a really tricky one. And like you're just saying, you want to make your first impression. You want to do it uninhibited. I'm assuming that what happens at the Intergalactic Star Cruiser is going to require things that'll be so fun that they might be more fun after we have a vaccine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it just makes sense. Who knows?
Again, so long story short, folks, we have a lot of half answers for you today, and hopefully on future shows we can get a little bit more definitive. Speaking of answers, though, I had a listener, Ricky, who loves looking at Lucasfilm, by the way, but evidently he has family who worked at 20th Century Fox back in the early 70s, and we did that story about the folks out in front of the Chinese theater surveying people, on Hollywood Boulevard about what they thought of the name Star Wars when it came to the possibility of a film that the studio might make. And Ricky volunteered that there was another aspect that impacted the survey. And in fact, evidently, this came up in the boardroom at 20th Century Fox when Alan Ladd was trying to get folks to sign off on it. And evidently, people, it was one of the written in answers as opposed to the actual survey. It's that they said that they felt that Star Wars was too close in a name sense to Star Trek. And that, so Star Wars, you mean like with Captain Kirk and Spock? Is this who's going to be in this movie? And, I guess this would have been the first official time that, the destinies of Star Wars and Star Trek were interwoven.
Yeah.
But it certainly wouldn't be the last. So I guess this brings me to, my first question. So, Dan, are you, in addition to your obvious love and depth of knowledge for Star Wars, are you also a Trekker? Are you also a fan of Star Trek?
Honestly, I'm ambivalent to Star Trek. I know supposedly there's some rivalry, but I don't know that I've ever met anyone who actually had a rivalry. I like the original series, Deep Space Nine, or not Deep Space Nine, but the Next Generation. I thought was cool, but I never really got into it. I read a couple of the novels, including one written by William Shatner. So I've always sort of enjoyed it, but it was always more just sort of when there's not another thing going on in the world that I'm excited about, Star Wars wise or superhero wise or whatever wise.
Mhm.
So I'm certainly not opposed to it, but I haven't watched the new Star Trek anything since probably the movie where Kirk was killed. That's how long it's been.
Okay, so Star Trek Generations.
Yeah.
What's genuinely interesting about the Star Wars Star Trek, and it's not a rivalry. I mean, they have their fan bases, and there were a few of us who have a foot in both worlds. I have to admit, I enjoy both.
That's great.
And again, I'm old enough to have seen the original Star Trek TV series in real time. In fact, I remember it was a very big deal that my parents would allow my brother Bob and I to stay up and watch Star Trek in its third season when NBC moved it to the death slot.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which was at Friday at 10 o'clock. It was the whole notion of, all right, we'll let you boys stay up till 10 o'clock on Friday.
Well, the cartoon was cool, and I had the Star Wars Mego action figures way back in the day too.
Well, but here's the thing that it wasn't honestly until the show goes off the air. It gets canceled after 3 seasons in February of 1969. But starting that spring, Paramount the Paramount television system, Paramount Television announces they're going to make Star Trek available for syndication starting in March they make the announcement in March. It will be available to start showing in syndication in September of that same year, 1969. And a number of big television stations around the country, like WGN in Chicago, likewise, one of the syndicated stations in Boston, WKGB, LA's KCOP, they took a flyer on the show, and it turns out it did crazy ratings. In fact, they reported in February of 1970. I mean, the show's only been airing in syndication for a couple of months at this point, but compared to how that time slot had previously done, for example, in the New York market, Star Trek performed 96% better than the show in that slot previously. LA 77%, Chicago 40%, but still up there. And so, as you mentioned, they did, on the heels of this success, they put a Star Trek animated series into production for NBC on Saturday mornings. It ran September of 73 to October of 74, only 22 episodes total of, and that's 2 seasons worth of episodes. But Paramount is sitting there looking at like, wow, we killed the golden goose. But, syndication is showing us there's really a market out there. There's really a hunger for this. So you mentioned Star Trek Next Generation and how you watched that when that launched in syndication. I want to say 87, 88.
That sounds right. Yeah, 87,
okay.
88. Yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing: back in the mid 70s, Paramount wanted to launch its own television network. And in fact, what they decided to do is, given how popular Star Trek had proven to be in syndication, that they were going to put the show back into production. They were going to do a show called Star Trek Phase 2, and the idea was that this was the second set of the 5-year voyage of the Enterprise. And the plan was that they were going to launch it in the fall of 77 with a 2-hour long premiere, and then 13 episodes, additional 13 episodes for the first season. But again, this is they're building the sets, they're writing the scripts, and but here's the interesting thing: they announced the launch of the Paramount television system in June of 77. And just a few weeks after a certain film opened in theaters, and, and and here's Michael Eisner, who at that time was not in charge of Disney; he was in charge of Paramount. And and Star Wars box office builds in May into June, and then June into July, and then it becomes the first film ever to sell $100 million worth of tickets in theatrical release. And and it's this point that Eisner turns to the people who were actually working on the television series and goes, "Stop. We're no longer making Star Trek Phase 2, the television series. We are making Star Trek the motion picture, because look at all the money the 20th Century Fox is making from that Star Wars movie." So that it doesn't, mind you, it doesn't get officially announced till March of 1978. And that was actually because they couldn't get Leonard Nimoy to agree to return to play Spock until literally, I want to say, the week before. That basically Eisner sent Jeffrey Katzenberg to New York, where Leonard Nimoy is appearing on Broadway in Equus. And so basically Jeffrey planted himself in Nimoy's dressing room, backstage at the theater. "What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? We need you for Star Trek the motion picture. What do you want?" And eventually they came to terms, and he came back and made the movie, which came out in December of 79. Wasn't all that good. In fact, I think for me the supreme irony is that whenever people talk about both the Star Wars and the Star Trek film series, they always cite the second film in the series as being the very best one.
Yeah, that's true, and they're also usually the darkest one too.
Yeah, and in fact, I wanted to ask: did you see that wonderful piece that StarWars.com just did about Ben Burtt?
I did. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I love where he chased down the various noises for Empire. I mean, that great story about the bathtub full of raccoons, or for that matter, letting the chimpanzees loose in that poor man's office just to get well, all right. Anyway, and again, just to give you some idea of how they continue to intertwine. January of 1987, we get our first theme park attraction based on one of these franchises. We get Star Tours opening at Disneyland. The very next year at Universal Studios Hollywood, we get the Star Trek Adventure. Have you ever seen any footage of that, Dan? Or
no, I always thought it would be cool to see, but I never got to.
Yeah, it's what's kind of interesting is that people would volunteer to be in this this film show, and they would dress them backstage in the uniforms from from Wrath of Khan, from Search to Spock, and put them on stage. And the interesting thing is that you could actually buy a video of your performance as you left.
It's amazing.
But we were just talking about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which of course Disneyland version opened in May of last year, and the Disney World version opened in August. But a lot of people, these days forget about Star Trek: The Experience, the Vegas, at the Las Vegas Hilton, where you literally got beamed aboard the Enterprise. They had this wonderful bit of stagecraft where. You ever heard about the opening moment of the Vegas show?
No.
Oh, they got a master illusionist to help out with this, and given that the attraction's closed, I don't necessarily feel bad about spoiling this illusion. But basically, the way your visit to the Star Trek Experience starts off. You're in what appears to be, a museum of props from the Star Trek films and the Star Trek television series, and there's costumes behind glass, and you ship props, and they hand props from the, and but you're in this rather large room, looking at this material, and there are video screens in the room playing that suddenly fuzz. And you see, someone who appears to be a crew member of the Enterprise who talks for a second and hang on, and the lights in the room suddenly go ridiculously bright. And then the room suddenly goes completely dark. And when the lights come back on, you're on a transporter pad on the Enterprise, and you haven't moved. And it's like, how did they do that? And the ingenious thing they did is that in the ceiling overhead of the museum space was a replica of the transporter room on a gimbal. And what they did is that the ceiling pulled back, and they rapidly lowered, mind you, the walls of the transporter room around you. So when your eyes adjusted to the lights coming back up, the museum is gone. You're on the transporter pad, and you have the crew member that you just saw quickly ushering you out of the room. So you don't have a moment to put together that, wait a minute, this room was lowered down around me. And they send you off. You're suddenly in a corridor of the Enterprise, and you're on your way to the bridge. But again, we were just talking about Oga's Cantina. A full, 20 years before that, you could go to Quark's bar at Star Trek: The Experience and sit there and drink blue Romulan ale. So for me, what was interesting was to watch the two franchises sort of pass the baton back and forth as to who got to be first, who got to make breakthroughs. And we were just talking about Wrath of Khan. That was one of the only moments where the two franchises actually lined up, because they wanted to be sure that the effects for the second Star Trek film were particularly spectacular. And at that point in Hollywood, there was only one place you went when you wanted truly spectacular effects, and that was ILM. And they delivered. That in fact, to bring Disney in yet again. I'm sure you remember from Wrath of Khan, the Genesis effects, the planet transformation scene, yes. Which was done, by ILM's Pixar division.
Wow!
Before George sold it off and it became its own company. But yeah, to sort of bring the story full circle, I remember, that there was never supposed to be a Star Trek the Motion Picture. There was always supposed to be Star Trek Phase 2, which was going to launch the Paramount Television Network, and didn't happen in 1977, but it did happen in 1995. That's when UPN launched, and as part of the launch of that's where we got Star Trek Voyager. So
Ricky,
anyway.
Thanks for suggesting that. That was super cool, and thanks for supporting the show.
Yeah. But again, I love that, to bring this full circle. That's like, oh, Star Wars. So you're making a movie with Kirk and Spock. Wow, that'll be cool. So, anyway, so speaking of cool things, stuff that I've certainly been enjoying. Dan, you're teaching with Star Wars series over at StarWars.com. That I know I've talked about the earlier installments, but the ones just over the past 2 weeks or so, the Leah's Leadership, that just went up a day or so, didn't it?
Today, this morning.
Yeah. And likewise, Lando's Choices. I mean, you're doing such a nice job of finding real world, ways to get into talking about these movies. I mean, they're so well written.
Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. They're fun to write, and I feel like with any good mythology, there are lessons in these old texts that apply to the world today, and I think there's just a lot of great stuff there.
Okay, and we were just talking earlier about different books is part of the Star Wars publishing program. And I don't want to keep underlining, circling, and denting here, but this seems like a book to me. It really does. They're all so well written, and I'm hoping at some point somebody thinks to collect them.
I love it. Well, let Lucasfilm know. I'd be happy to do it.
Okay. All right. Now, in addition to your writing dues over StarWars.com, so what's going on with Coffee with Kenobi these days?
So this week we're going to publish our 350th show, 350, which is pretty great. And if the stars align, we're going to have a really, really great guest from the films it's going to be on. So I'm looking forward to announcing that when actually everything lines up correctly. And on our Patreon show, our CWK Profile, we're in the middle of our top 15 favorite movies of all time. We tried to steer clear of Star Wars just to kind of open up the field a little bit. But of course, in my list, there's going to be some Star Wars that's going to pop up. But this weekend, we're going to have movies 6 through 10. It's going to be fun.
And while you're checking out stuff on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network side, we've, of course, got Disney Dish, and Len has been working like a Trojan lately. He just again did that walkthrough of the Magic Kingdom during the cast member preview day. He and Laurel also this past weekend over the July 4th weekend checked out Wilderness Lodge and how it was after coming back from being closed since mid-March. And of course we have the wonderful Drew Taylor, yes, who I do the fine tuning show with. And God, this has been a crazy week for animation news. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about on the next show. Likewise, Aaron Adams, the gentleman who edits a lot of podcasts here, he and I just did a brand new Mud that'll be dropping on Friday of this week.
Great.
Let's see, Dustin Fuse and I, in fact, just today, a brand new Universal joint went up. We were talking about all of the the weird new stuff that's going on at the Florida parks there. And sometime toward the end of this week, I'm finally going to get a new I Want That Out the Door with Shelley Valladolid. But there's this fascinating rumor that one of the things that may wind up going down as part of the Disney company reinventing itself after the coronavirus is that we may see a number of the Disney stores around the country close. So,
oh wow,
which I hope is not the case, because
I
go to my local one and pick up a lot of Star Wars related stuff there. Speaking of Star Wars, of course, if you could do, Dan and myself a favor, if you could head over to iTunes and not only rate and recommend Coffee with Kenobi, but also the podcast you're listening to here now, looking at Lucasfilm. And again, if you want to hear those shows, the special Bandcamp exclusive shows that Len is doing, you should probably head over to Bandcamp and subscribe. Meanwhile, though, Dan, just to keep tabs on what you're up to, and again, you're always on Twitter. I'm just amazed at the amount of stuff you post on Twitter. Where else can folks find you social media wise?
Well, social media, you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR, and then you can find Coffee with Kenobi on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and YouTube. And also, you mentioned Drew and your guys' great fine-tuning all the animation news. This is probably a good time to announce that Drew and I are going to be the voice of Beavis and Butthead for the reboot. And depending on the day, who the Butthead is, I guess.
Oh, well, always nice to break a little news here. Okay. Yes. And we've got more news breaking. There's a phone ring in the background, so I should probably go get that. But all right. Before I go into the phone, we've got Nancy would like me to remind you, for us, social media wise, we have what is it? Jim Hill. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and also on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that's going to do it for now, Dan. But hopefully by the next time we record, we'll definitely have some info about whether or not Oga's Cantina is serving alcohol. And, I guess we'll share that on the next show.